I caught my wife cheating at a bar during my depression. Then I unmasked her affairs and publicly revealed her betrayal to reclaim my life and peace forever. I, 37 male, have been married to my wife, Daphne, 36 female, for 9 years now, but we have known each other since high school. Needless to say, she is one of the people on the planet who knows the most about me, and I can also say that I know a whole lot about her, having grown into adulthood together. For the sake of telling the story publicly, let me just say that her name is Daphne. It breaks my heart to even need to ask for advice on this matter, but I honestly do not know what to do, and my mental state is not helping at all. I might need to give you all a bit of background so you can understand things a lot better. I do not want to give too many details, but I had a very rough time growing up, if that is not an understatement. I grew up with a mother addicted to drugs and a great father who met his end due to junkie friends of my mother's. I was the one who found him and had to call, and I do not know if I can ever fully appreciate the extent to which that scarred me. I will be honest and say that I grew up resenting my mother and women in general very strongly. I entered foster care with a very kind foster family and was unnecessarily a jerk to many of the people in the house. But with time, their love softened me, though I was still holding on to a lot of pain. Quite naturally, I started seeing a therapist very early in my life because I have been dealing with a lot of mental health issues, but I always try to stay positive and fight through things. Meeting Daphne in high school was also a major boost in my happiness, and we were friends for several years before the notion of anything romantic even started between us. Again, I was extremely resentful towards women, and I think having a healthy relationship with Daphne sort of helped me push out of that. Anyway, we both graduated high school and went to the same college, where we both graduated once again. Honestly, everyone could tell that we would likely end up together, but I guess, trying to be the edgy young adult that I used to be, I would deny it and act oblivious to even the mere possibility of ending up with her. About 2 years after graduating from college, I officially asked her to be my girlfriend. I proposed to her a year later, and 9 years ago, we got married. Daphne was not there through the absolute hardest times of my life, but she has always known about my mental health struggles, and she has been there to witness some of my hardest battles. I have always apologized for the way I might treat her in those moments, or the way she needs to baby me, but she has always been so kind, and she has always said that she does not mind. I even asked her at several points in our relationship whether she was sure about being burdened with me and my problems, but she always claimed that she was, and that she would go the entire way with me. I think that is enough background. You should be able to understand what I have to say with this much background. So let me try my best to tell it. The real problem started about 4 months ago when I was dealing with a pretty bad episode of depression. Honestly, as much as I push forward in life, some of the things that happened way back in the past still have a pretty strong hold on me, and it is hard for me to completely let go of them, no matter how many therapy sessions I choose to attend. Though bad episodes have become fewer and farther apart the older that I have gotten, that episode lasted about 5 days. Usually Daphne is with me as much as she can be, but it was very clear that something was very different this time around. She stuck around the first 2 days, but halfway through the third day, she seemed cold, and she told me that she had something that she had to do. I was not in the headspace to really inquire about what it was that she had to do, so she left and came back much later in the night. I am not too sure what the time was, though. The same thing happened the next 2 days. It was the final day that I noticed she came back around 1 a.m. I did not have much to say about it though, again because of how I was feeling. It was only when I was fully out of the whole thing that I started to think about it with a clear head. I have known her for about 2 decades, and that was very unusual behavior, so it stayed on my mind for quite some time. To be honest, cheating was not part of what jumped into my head, because you think that you know people, right? I considered bringing it up, but for some reason I decided to let the whole thing go, which was likely a dumb move now. It was not until about 2 months later, when I had a really bad day, that I realized that something seemed to be up. Just like the other time, she basically disappeared halfway through the day, and I knew that something was really wrong at this point. It made the day much worse because it seemed like Daphne was avoiding me, which was very unusual behavior from her. Fortunately, this was just a bad day and not a proper episode of depression, so I bounced back by the end of the day, though she was not back by that point. As soon as she stepped back into the house, I paused the game that I was playing and I asked her where she had been, not in an accusatory tone as far as I know. But she responded to me in an extremely defensive manner, asking why I was coming at her, like that it came out of nowhere, and I was really shocked because I had not spoken unkindly in any fashion. She seemed ready to explode at me, so I took a breath and asked her again as calmly as I could. She just stared at me angry for like a full 10 seconds before she eventually said that she had a date with her girls that she completely forgot about. Honestly, that answer sounded suspect to me, so I brought up the previous time that I had been depressed and the way that she had also gone out during those days, but she claimed that she had no idea what I was talking about. To be fair, it had been over 2 months at that point, so I did not want to call her a liar in my head, though a pattern was starting to be established. Even after things started to seem fine between the two of us, it was still on my mind because I knew there was something being hidden. I just could not figure out what it was. It was when Daphne vanished on a third occasion. I was not even having a bad day, I was just really busy, that I knew something had to be up. It was so evident to me at that point. When she got back home that day, I did not attempt to start any conversation about where she had been. I just conversed normally about mundane things, and she did not lash out or anything like she did the other time. I was hoping she might have volunteered where she was this time around, but she did not say anything to that effect. I think it was precisely at that point that I knew I was going to have to find out where she was going on my own. I have always been a relatively tech-savvy person, and I know my way around an Android phone pretty well. As soon as my wife went into the shower without her phone, I went straight to Google Maps to check her location history. That night, she went to a bar and then to what seemed to be a residential address. I checked the previous time that she had disappeared like that, and it was pretty similar. She went to the same bar, but she ended up in a different house. I was taking pictures of all this with my phone, especially because I planned to do more research on the addresses she was heading to. All I needed was for those addresses to truly belong to any of her girls, and I would feel so much better. I was going to check the dates for the very first time that she disappeared, but I could hear her wrapping up in the bathroom, so I stopped. But honestly, I felt like I was going to lose my mind from the uncertainty. I was not too sure how I was going to find the information that I needed based on those addresses alone, but I knew it would be the only way that I could get any closure. I knew there were 2 possibilities. Either my wife was cheating on me, or she was truly going out with her girls. Quite unceremoniously, going out to bars and ending up at someone's home could align with what she had told me, but it also could mean that she was going out to bars and going home with random men. She eventually came out of the bathroom, we did some small talk, which I really had to struggle through, and she went to bed. She went to sleep with her phone in her hand, and I carefully pried it out. My heart was beating furiously, trust me. She did not wake up though, and after doing a little mental math, I checked for the first day that she disappeared suddenly. It was the same thing on all 3 days, though on 2 of those days she went to the same address after the bar. I think it was at that point that I realized what I needed to do. I had considered hiring a private investigator to tell me who lived at the addresses that I had, but I realized there was an easier way for me to do things. I just needed to set her up. The next weekend, I did my best to fake being in a mood, which was a lot harder than I assumed it would be, considering all the practice that I have gotten through my years. Exactly as I wanted, around 6 p.m., Daphne went to the room, came out dressed, and slipped out of the house, thinking she was unnoticed. A few minutes later, I went too, with the cartoonish disguise of a pair of shades, a jacket, and a baseball cap, and I headed straight to the same bar that I knew she was going to. I really hoped she would not be able to identify me, otherwise my plan might never work again. I walked into the bar, and it did not take me long to spot her sitting at the bar. She was alone, but she had ordered a drink already. I remember hoping that her friends would eventually join her there. I found a corner to sit in that I hoped she would not notice me in, and I waited for a long time before I saw someone sit beside her. They sat there in silence for a bit before he said something to her, and I guessed from the body language that they did not know each other. If I had come in about 10 minutes later, though, I would likely have reached a different conclusion with the way they were laughing and the way she kept touching him. I really felt that I had seen enough at that point, but I used my self-control to wait and see how things were going to play out. There was still a stupid part of me that was hoping that her girls would show up, and the guy was just there to help kill some time. Nope. I was there until about 1 hour and several drinks later, when they both stood up and exited the bar together. I followed them as they went on foot about 3 blocks away. Then they went up to an apartment building, and that was it. I felt like I was going to lose my mind, and as someone who already acknowledges that they have a fragile psyche, this certainly did not help. I felt like I was going to lose my mind. From across the street from the apartment building, I decided to wait, though I was going to wait until she came out, take a picture, and head back home. That was my plan. It was my plan until I actually saw her come out with the guy. I took several pictures as they stood under the well-lit entrance to the building, but when they had a parting kiss right there, I had taken my last photo. I stormed across the street, against what I knew was my better judgment, and to be honest, I know I was very uncomposed. You cannot blame me, though. I can barely remember the things that I said, but I remember that I was shouting and yelling, asking her how she could do that to me, saying that I knew she was up to no good, and so on and so on. I was almost about to slug the guy beside her, with a stupid, baffled look on his face, before she told him to go back to his house, and he obeyed right away. When it was just me and her, we just stood there staring at each other. I know I was shaking with rage, and I was battling with a lot of very messed up thoughts in that moment. You know what it is like to realize that you can never really trust anyone? That anyone is capable of betraying you? I think it was when all these thoughts were pouring through my head that I asked her, why? I am tired of dealing with your depression and your moods. It is exhausting. I needed happiness. She did not think much before she let that loose on me, and honestly, I was left broken by these words. Even now, a few days after this thing happened, those words still sting. It was exactly what I was trying to avoid when I wanted her to be sure she wanted something serious with me, because I have always known that I will be forever burdened with depression, but she seemed to accept me for who I was and who I am. I just started walking away at that point. It took me over 1 hour to get back home because I was wandering the streets aimlessly. It was dangerous, but part of me wanted to get hurt, honestly. Maybe the pain could end, or something would happen to help me forget about everything. Looking back, that was a stupid thought, but I get where it was coming from. By the time I got back to the house, Daphne was there, and I guess she had enough time to realize how stupid her words were. She started to beg as soon as she saw me, but I said nothing. I went straight to her room and locked the door because seeing her was infuriating me. I wanted to tell her to get out of the house, but at the same time, I did not want to spare a word on her. I barely slept, but the next morning I did not see her. I was glad I did not need to interact with her, and I did not care where she was. I still do not know where she is or where she has been, and I do not care. But at this point, I need to make her hurt. I have been living my life with hurt because I lived through so many traumas, and to have the person I thought was my safe space add to it was one of the most painful things that I have been through. I will be reading every single comment that is dropped here because I have nothing better to do, but I want to know how I can make her hurt the way that she has hurt me. I think that is the only thing that will help me feel some form of closure at this point, because I have no interest in cheating back. Imagine surviving a tragic childhood drama, only to stumble into a midlife betrayal. It is like life handed you a ticket to a never-ending emotional roller coaster, and instead of enjoying the view, you are left wondering when the ride will finally end. But hey, look at the bright side, Opie. You have inadvertently conducted a social experiment on the limits of marital patience and the human capacity for betrayal. Just when you think you are having a bad day, your wife's side quest for happiness turns into your main storyline. It is almost poetic how her quest for happiness involves stumbling into the arms of a stranger at a bar. But seriously, as for making her hurt the way she made you hurt, remember that nothing screams poetic justice quite like hitting the reset button on your life. Move on, find someone who understands that depression is not just a phase, and live your best life. The best revenge, after all, is living well and maybe, just maybe, making her watch you do it from afar, realizing what she threw away for a few cheap thrills at a bar. Update. I want to thank absolutely everyone who helped me out with my previous post. Honestly, it was really hard to open up like that and expose all my weaknesses, but most of the comments were incredibly kind and supportive, and I am very grateful for that. It has been quite a while since I made my last post, but I am glad to say that things are much better for me, and I took a lot of advice that you all gave to plot my next move as best I could. The first thing I did was call her over for us to talk. She had no idea, but I had already spoken at length to the divorce attorney, and I knew there was no fixing what we had. I admit that I might have been fool enough if she had merely cheated on me once, but after cheating on me with what I assumed were multiple people, and also the horrible words she spoke to me, I knew there was no going back. I would not ever be able to love this woman again. As soon as she got to my house, I asked her to sit down, and she did. I asked her how many people she had cheated on me with, and she initially said just the one, but I kept pressing, telling her that I knew more than she thought I did. She insisted over and over that it was just one person until I bluffed and told her I had hired a private investigator. I mentioned one address and then another, and that is when she finally decided to let loose that she had slept with 3 people. I do not know if that was the absolute truth, but it was all I needed to hear. I handed her the divorce papers at that point, and I told her that I could not do life with her anymore. She started begging and pleading, which was not unexpected, but I think she realized that it was pointless, and she basically gave up after a bit. She walked out with the papers, and I drank the rest of the day. Eventually, we got to the whole divorce proceeding stage, and I was glad that I had a bit of evidence pointing to the fact that she was unfaithful, which helped swing things in my favor. Unsurprisingly, my mental health got dragged into the whole matter, with a lot of talk about how it made it hard to live with me. Honestly, things got really dirty at that point, and it was horrible hearing my struggles weaponized like that. Of course, I think most divorces are messy like that, as far as movies have shown me. I do not want to bore you with how this side of things went, but it dragged on for a pretty long time. In the end, her lawyer was able to make it seem like her dealing with me and my mental health had been a major struggle for her, which I can admit it definitely is not easy, but it was not permitted as justification for infidelity. For the most part, things pushed in my favor. I managed to escape any alimony payments, and I relinquished our apartment because there were going to be too many bad memories for me there. I managed to get the car though, which was certainly going to be more useful for me than the house would be after the divorce. Weeks later, once I had settled into my new place, I made sure to tell every single person who knew both of us that Daphne and I were splitting up. I went into detail, not telling a single lie, but exposing her for cheating on me because of my depressive episodes. I sent the same text to friends, family, co-workers I was familiar with, and even our former landlady. I needed to make sure that everyone knew that she was a scumbag, so that if they wanted to get involved with her in the future, they would know what they were up against. She called me about 1 hour after and cursed me out for like 10 minutes straight, but I just let her get it all out before hanging up the phone on her. I have not spoken to Daphne since she called me to yell every expletive in the book, but a CO worker replied to a message of mine saying that she has been having a hard time with gossip in the workplace, that maybe I would consider recanting my statement to help her out. I left her on read. I do not think I am going to do relationships anymore. There is too much fear in me now as to the ways a woman can hurt me, and I'm not excited to discover a new one. Maybe I will have fun on dating apps because the body has needs, but I do not think I am after anything serious anymore. I am relatively old, I do not desire children, and maybe not having a woman in my life will bring simplicity, which is fine by me. Anyway, I hope those of you who choose to will find women you can trust and love forever because I know that they are out there, but I'm just not willing to take the risk and find any of them myself. First off, kudos to you for taking charge of your situation and navigating the emotional minefield that was your last post. It is no small feat to bare your soul like that, and it is great to hear that you found the support you needed. So, the showdown with Daphne, what a scene. You handled it like a seasoned pro. The bluff about the private investigator? Genius. And lo and behold, she confessed to 3 affairs. Honestly, wow. There she was, pleading and begging while you stood firm. It is sad to see how things turned out, but it is clear there was no salvaging the relationship. You knew your worth and did not settle for less, which is commendable. The divorce proceedings sounded brutal, with your mental health dragged into the spotlight like that. It is disheartening how your struggles were weaponized against you, but it is a relief to hear that things mostly went in your favor. Keeping the car and ditching the apartment and all its bad memories sounds like a smart move. Your post-divorce move was both bold and brilliant, telling everyone the truth about Daphne. That is a masterclass in public service announcements. Sure, she was not happy, and that epic 10-minute curse-out was probably expected, but you stood your ground and made sure the people around you know the real story. What would you have done? Thank you for joining us today. Be sure to like and subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you do not miss out on our next video. Until next time.